September the 21st, 2021. Guys, these are current images this morning over the U.S. satellite images. And you notice there's a front that's moving down from the Arctic and down through Canada. And you can tell where it's at right here. See this bow? It's coming down. That is cold air. It's pushing from the north. And the reason I want to talk about this is that last night you guys up in Utah, we got friends there, and Wyoming, you had hard freeze warnings, not just freeze warnings, but hard freeze warnings, and it's warming back up today. And the only thing forecast tonight is here, where you see the very edge of the storm coming through eastern parts of Colorado. You got frost advisories there tonight. So you had that one hard impact. Something else that can happen when you're mixing these different fronts, very cold air with warm air, is yesterday evening, you guys up in the northeast were getting tornadoes as this cold front dove down and the thing is moving further south. Now, I'm not that worried about tornadoes at this point. There are flash flood warnings where you see some of the higher clouds now, but I want you to remember the ice storm that came through Texas and Louisiana and Mississippi, Arkansas. The southeast got really cold. We were the out power here for, I think, about 48 hours, and we had our solar panels. Many people were not that fortunate at that time. Texas, remember the blackouts, frozen windmills, no gas for the generators, and the price of electricity skyrocketed there temporarily. And when it's that cold, and it was cold, it's hard to deal without heat. We had a wood burner, we had our solar panels, so we could watch TV, we could check the weather on the computers. I think I did a video, but the ice just lingered. I had to take a pitchfork, one of the hard ones, and bust the 2 inches of ice off the deck even a couple of days after the darn ice storm hit. And the sun was out. It just wasn't going anywhere. We had to do the same thing in the driveway. It was a pretty unprecedented event. And what was happening is we're, of course, in grand solar minimum. Summers are going to be wild. The weather's going to change a lot. You're going to have cold spells through the winter that could be worse this year than we saw last year. It may not be continuing, and it wasn't last year. That ice storm came and went. We had some cold weather. I still have about a cord of firewood left from last winter. I was thinking I would more than likely need all of it, but it's been fairly mild. And let me say this, in the southeast, since Hurricane Ida came in a few weeks back, in central Mississippi where I'm at, it's been cooler than normal. Now, that was not true along the southeast coast of Louisiana and Mississippi, because you had the influence of warm Gulf air, but we were getting, if you guys remember, these fronts coming down and keeping it cooler, and that was kind of amazing, because usually after a September hurricane such as Katrina or something like that, it becomes very hot all the way through the southeast. I'm talking about unbearable, and if you remember the couple of weeks we had no power during Katrina, it was unbearable. But that didn't happen, except along the very coast, again, because of the influence of the Gulf winds and moisture. But these fronts have been diving down. In Utah, last night, and parts of Wyoming, in the upper elevations, you had hard freeze warnings. That's gone. You got frost warnings for southeastern Colorado tonight. But I looked at some information about Salt Lake City, which was not, I don't think, involved in they're kind of lower elevation than some of the, Logan and places like that. They were in the hard freeze warnings. But this September the 9th was the hottest September the 9th on record. Last year, September 9th, was the coldest September 9th on record, just to show you how wildly these things swing. But again, these cool fronts dipping down are giving me a concern about this coming winter. So it's not a really early heads up. We're in September, but we're at least 6 weeks ahead of normal cooling. at least 6 weeks now. So are you prepared with extra firewood, if you're using propane tanks, if you got extra propane? Solar panels are better than nothing. I think the best thing for heat, though, is a wood burner or a fireplace. Wood burners are more efficient, and you can get the two I-top, the older type, like maybe you've seen mine in some of the videos during the winters, for about $300. I think I got mine at Sutherland 10 years ago for about $200, and you got some piping in there. Some cities restrict, I know that, wood burners because of you'd have so many people burning that the smoke would be pretty rough. But in the other areas, think about that. That's probably about 1 month's heavy-duty electricity bill for central heat. And if the grid's not there, you don't have much. So think about converting your method of heating. And if you are on propane, the price is getting very high. And it will be getting higher as we get closer to the very cold weather. And I would also start checking to make sure there's not going to be shortages this year of natural gas or propane, simply because everything else is backed up as far as shipping, availability, pipeline shutdowns, things like that. Now you're looking at this current edition of the Old Farmer's Almanac. It's for the winter that's coming up, 2021-2022. They're calling it A Season of Shivers Awaits Winter, according to the Old Farmer's Almanac. And they, a lot of people say they're just a prediction service, but they're pretty accurate. I think there are over 300 and something editions now. But what's happening is in the Pacific Ocean, during the La Nina period, the waters along the equator in the oceans don't get as warm as they do in an El Nino period. But the La Nina is what we had last winter, and it's continuing this winter. So all of the weather that drifts from the left of this map to the west to the right, which it does through the winter most of the time, and from the north mixing with the cold fronts, it's looking at 2 years in a row of La Nina. And that's kind of what they're basing their information on here. And you can see a map here where in the states that were hardest hit by the ice last year, cold and wet, that's the worst case scenario. Cold and dry, that's bad enough, but when you have ice and stuff and knocking down power lines, then it becomes critical. So you can look around on this map, cold and wet, up in the northeast, certain sections, mild, snowy, mild, cold and wet in the very northeast, cold, snowy here, just north of in the New York area, and through this section of the central part of the country. Now, when I'm saying that, I'm not saying it will be on the average the coldest winter, but those times when it dips down and it causes a chaos like we saw last winter, then it can be life-threatening. People can freeze to death, and things are changing. You got, say for instance, last winter we had a cold Atlantic Ocean, La Nina. Before that, it was a warm one, the year before that. So now we're going to have 2 years of it not warming up. So that means this winter, it could be a little cooler than it was last winter because it's not having to cool back down. Do you understand what I'm saying? Now, this is just a highlight out of the article. It says, this winter will be punctuated by positively bone-chilling below-average temperatures across most of the U.S., according to the winter forecast. And I said this wrong. It says here the 2020 Old Farmer's Almanac will be the 230th edition. I said about 300. But it's North America's oldest continuously published periodical. Now, the Almanac claims it's the weather forecast, and the Farmer's Almanac, they claim that their forecasts are 80% accurate, but they are using data. Like I said, they have looked at the El Nino and La Nina patterns throughout the years, going probably back since you could look at those. But this coming winter could well be one of the longest and coldest that we've seen in years. This is Janice Stillman, editor of the Old Farmer's Almanac. Now, The longevity usually is determined by first freeze and last freeze in the spring in a lot of places. In some places, the super cold of the coming winter will also bring lots of snow. This extreme wintry mix is expected in areas of New England, as well as throughout the Ohio Valley, in northern portions of the Deep South, and in southeast New Mexico. And that's what we were seeing on that colored map. Above average snowfall is also in the forecast along a track from eastern Montana southward through the western halves of the Dakotas and into northeastern Colorado, while temperatures in this mid-country strip will be relatively normal. Snowfall will be abundant with several storms predicted throughout the winter. Maybe that will help some of the drought conditions. But guys, the almanac, I've had it and got it for years. It also has a lot of planting tips in it for the spring and things like that in the summer, and depending on your region. But you can get it if you're interested in this type of stuff. But to me, it's just the indicator, along with the other weather services are mentioning the cooler waters in the equatorial Pacific waters are cooler. And that's where we're going to get our weather. And you combine them with these deep drops out of the Arctic, it could be very cold. So my point is to prepare for all possibilities. Extra firewood, propane if you use it. And guys, seriously look at a wood-burning heater if you're in an area where you can, you're allowed by permits to use it. I think one day if we ever have a full grid down situation, whether it's a solar flare or whatever, even if you can't burn a heater now, by then nobody will care. If the cops come to your door, they'll probably just want to get warm. You know what I mean? So that's, to me, it was probably one of my first bug out tools several years ago was my wood burner, just a simple 2-eye wood burner. And again, the last time I looked at Sutherland's, they're a building supplier, lumber company here in the South, and I think there may be national. But if they don't have them, you can probably find one. But about $2.99 it's the 4-legged old antique style. Door opens in the front. You have 2 burners on the top where you can also cook during the winter. And probably another $100 in pipe. But it's the investment that is well worth it and probably really helped us make it last winter. We use it every winter, but during that ice storm with no electricity just running from our solar panels, you can, your electric heat's not going to work, your central heat and all of that. So just think about a wood burner. It's a heads up, guys. Be safe.